So we have a lot to talk about today. So come on in, everybody, and we'll get right to it. It's going to be a little bit shorter today. I've got to impose a little bit of discipline on how much I can devote to this because the schedule is very busy right now. Lots of balls that are being juggled, so it's very difficult.
We call this the lightning round.
All right, fair enough. Like an hour will be a lightning round for us. Um,
Yeah.
we have a lot to talk about. I think mostly the biggest focus really is going to be the Illinois Democratic primaries. Well, both Republican and Democratic primaries happened last night, but the Democratic primaries are of greatest interest to us. As I wrote about earlier today in my Substack, Truth and Consequences. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. Also, subscribe to the World According to Brian. But as I wrote about today, this was a bad night for the left. Left-wing candidates, leftist candidates just did not do very well. And it seems as though voters in Illinois, as we saw in Texas, seem to just are being pragmatic. They're voting for more. I mean, look, let me be clear. Like the ninth district, for example, the candidate who won, Daniel Biss, who's mayor of Evanston, Illinois, he's a pretty progressive guy. Julia Stratton, who won the Senate primary, she's pretty progressive, wants to abolish ICE, Medicare for all. But the more left-wing candidates, especially the ones who are focused on Israel and Gaza, who performed the worst. And I do think, the takeaway for me from this is that, Democratic voters are okay with people who have political experience. They're okay with people who might be considered part of the establishment, and they don't really care about these Israel debates as much as I think people on social media or on the left, think they do. So that to me is sort of the big takeaway from what happened last night in Illinois.
Yeah, I mean, I told the subscribers to the World According to Brian in a video yesterday that I didn't really care that much about the Illinois primaries because my attitude
Yep.
was it's a blue state and all the Senate nominee candidates were perfectly fine as far as I was concerned. They were normal. There was nobody who was going to bring disrepute to the party. There was nobody who was like way more electable. So I didn't care as much about these primaries. But I think what Michael said is right. And it's something that we keep getting wrong in our politics. I don't even know if it's 10 years, 15 years, however long it's been. We keep hearing about a Democratic Tea Party
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the rise of that kind of thing. And the fact of the matter is the Democratic establishment is just stronger. Democratic voters are more mainstream. They're
Yeah.
more pragmatic. The
Yeah.
establishment has more of ability to get what they want out of primaries. And we saw this again here last night. The left had an abysmal night. The Bernie back candidates did not do well.
No.
And also it was heartening to see that it was a bad night for the crypto packs too, because they're starting to really
It was
annoy
a little
me.
bit. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like they think that they could come in on an issue to frankly 1% of Americans care about, and that's on the high end. Like nobody gives a shit about crypto policy, at least.
No.
Um,
No.
I
But
mean, I couldn't even tell you what my preferred crypto policy is.
I have no idea. And Lynn Muster asked a good question. Says, she said, Dems seem to be acting more rationally. The GOP not doing that. Do you agree? And I absolutely agree with that. And I think that, by the way, is kind of the last, I don't know, 10 to 15 years of American politics. I mean, Republicans have thrown away, I don't know, at least maybe half dozen winnable Senate races by nominating right-wing lunatics. And Democrats just don't do that. And, when they nominate bad candidates, I think the most obvious example would be Andrew Gillum in Florida for the governor's race there.
Yep.
They
They
often
lose.
lose. They lose. When they nominate sort of more establishment-y, pragmatic, sort of mainstream, you could say milquetoast Democrats, they do well. And that's generally what Democratic voters do. They really don't seem to buy into the I don't say extremes, that's not a fair way to put it, but they're not looking for sort of dyed-in-the-wool liberals. They're not. It's not who they're supporting. And I think, by the way, for the record, I mean, this may be a bit of a reach, but if I'm working for Graham Plattner in Maine, I'm a little concerned what happened last night in Illinois, because I just think that I think there's a predisposition among Democrats to choose the candidate who is more electable, who is more mainstream, who is safer. I think that's
Okay.
where the bias is among Democratic voters. That is not the case with Republicans. They vote with their hearts. That's why you get someone
Well,
like Ken Paxton, who almost it was likely going to win the runoff against John Cornyn.
let me can I offer an explanation for why I think
Sure,
that is?
please, please.
I think the political culture on each side was shaped by two distinct things. On the right, I think it's shaped by the fact that the right correctly recognizes that for the last 50 years they've been losing the culture wars, and they have gotten more and more panicked, and they want bigger and bigger fighters, people who are just going to enrage people like Michael and I. Like, and that's what the Ken Paxtons of the world do. They are extremists who are willing to, they'd rather lose and go down a blaze of glory than be pragmatic. On the left, I think the political culture is shaped by the long echoes of George McGovern and Walter Mondale
I
and
think that's
Michael
right.
Dukakis, and losing because their candidate was branded as too far left. Even John Kerry was hurt by the Massachusetts liberal thing. And I think the Democratic voters said, okay, we like winning. And the way you win is by having people who code as more moderate and more electable. And they don't want the risk. And I think that the only thing that we've seen so far this year that would suggest otherwise is in that New Jersey primary that was on a weird day, and it was like a 5 or 6 way race. I think that the left's best shot are in those races where there's 5 or 6 legitimate candidates, and you're talking about somebody winning under 30. The thing about all these races in Illinois is there were not that many candidates. There were 2 or 3 in most of them. And so I think that that's really a big thing. I also agree with Michael that I think that for as much as a lot of us spend time screaming at each other on Twitter about Israel, that for the average voter, it's not front of mind, at least the average voter over 30. It's
Yeah,
not the top issue. And I think that candidates who've decided that that's the litmus test are going to find that out this primary cycle. So I think it's a good night for the establishment. I think it's a good night for the party. And I agree with Michael that my first thought was this is bad for Plattner, especially because Janet Mills finally started going negative yesterday, with a pretty devastating ad on some of what
yeah.
he said about women on
Tough ad.
Reddit.
Very tough ad.
And the Emily's List president seemed to suggest that they're going to start getting involved, which means Plattner's going to face a lot of negative money, coming in on him. So I think that was my biggest takeaway from the night, and I think it's something that people keep saying. Well, we expect the Democrats to do what the Republicans have done, and not to learn from their mistakes. And maybe that they're a little bit more resistant to that than we think. And we got another example this morning. Elizabeth Warren endorsed Mallory McMurrow in the Michigan Senate race. Now, McMurrow is certainly to the left of Haley Stevens, but she's not Abdul Al Said, who got Bernie's endorsement.
Right.
And it's a sign that Warren is basically saying, look, I don't think this guy can win. So let me go with the leftmost candidate who can win.
But McMorrow is definitely more, I think, ideologically
Yeah,
closer to Warren than Abdul Said is. By the way, Bernie Sanders, who I can't think of a political figure I detest on the left I detest more than Bernie Sanders. Um, he endorsed 3 candidates yesterday. They all lost. He is a plague of the Democratic Party. He really, I think, just he. A lot of these people will endorse somebody like I like people like Gallego endorse Plattner and Martin Heinrich endorse Plattner because I think they think politically it's envious to be on the left. Like they're doing this for their political benefit. Bernie does it for ideological reasons and doesn't care if these guys win or lose. And it's all about the ideology to him. And the thing is, like, his endorsement is basically a kiss of death. Very, very few people he endorses actually win. And I actually wonder if it hurts him a little bit too. But I want to pick up one point you said I think is really important just to come full circle in this conversation. I think the Democrats of a certain age, they remember like 88 and losing, Dukakis losing. Democrats lose the White House for 3 elections in a row. Hadn't happened since, I think, 52. And, it's rare for a party to win 3 elections in a row, 3 presidential elections in a row. And I think for a lot of Democrats, like the response to that was that we need to think about how do we make ourselves electable? How do we make the party electable? And that's a big part of the reason why uh, Clinton won in '92. And people forget this now. It's hard to believe for the younger generation, but part of the motivation was, well, Clinton can help the Democrats win the South, which actually he did. Democrats, they won Louisiana that year. They won Georgia, Tennessee, and Arkansas, obviously. So the electability thing I think, has kind of been, I don't know, like it's part of the DNA of Democrats, and and that's been that way for 30 years. Republicans just don't think in those terms. They don't. And It's a very and it's really cost them, and I think it's going to cost them this cycle. And I think you already saw it in Texas. I mean, look, the smart choice for Republicans in Texas is John Cornyn. We think he's going to win? Probably not. The smart
Nope.
choice in that Texas Senate House race was probably Dan Crenshaw. He lost, and the smart choice was not not voting for this Gonzalez figure who basically raped his staffer, and he basically he won the runoff, although he's dropped out since then. So I do think there's a big difference in just how the parties approach these issues, and I think what you're seeing, and I think again this is bad news for Plattner. I think you're seeing Democrats who are basically saying we don't want to take a risk. Look, there's an ad. I put this in my Substack today. There's an ad that Juliana Stratton. Sorry, I'm getting pronouncing your name. The Senate governor in Illinois, now the Senate Democratic Senate candidate. She ran this ad that basically had like four people saying "fuck Trump." Like I've never seen an ad before like that. I was shocked when I
Yeah.
saw it. They say "fuck Trump," and she's like, "Well, they said it." I'm like, okay, but you just ran it. But nonetheless, like her whole message is Trump sucks, and I'm going to stand up to Trump. And look, I get that it resonates more in Chicago because of what happened with the ICE raids, last year. But the message is the message, and it is the Democrats who do the best are the ones I suspect who are standing up the most to Trump, or appear to be, or who Democrats think can win and get elected. Like I just think that the hatred of Trump is so pervasive in Democratic circles, and for good reason, right? He's a disaster, he's a terrible president, a terrible person. I get why they feel this way, and so that distrust and dislike of Trump is what is motivating Democratic voters. Forget all these other issues. Forget Israel. Forget Gaza. Forget who's got a better health care plan. Forget all of this stuff. I don't think any of that matters as much as Democrats' obsession with defeating Trump and nominating Democrats who can defeat Trump, or who can stop Trump. That's what's going on, and I think that we've seen that already. You saw Tallarico winning in Texas. I mean, there's lots of reasons why he won, but certainly couldn't be lost on voters that he's a better bet to win than Jasmine Crockett. And I mean, I know in Illinois, this is a safe blue state. These aren't going to come up. These aren't going to be much of an issue. But I do wonder if you get further along this primary cycle, you see more and more Democratic voters saying, "I could vote with my heart. Maybe I like this person's healthcare policy, but ultimately, if I'm in Maine, for example, I want to beat Susan Collins, and that's what's going to motivate me. That's how I'm going to choose. That's how I'm going to decide what I vote for."
Yeah, and I think that the Stratton ad shows that you can project that you're a fighter without being an extremist. And even tactically, you don't have to embrace the most extreme tactics to say, "Hey, I'm going to fight back. I am going to be a clarion voice for right versus wrong." And I think that that is certainly possible. And I think that the Democratic voters just understand that when their candidates are branded too far to the left, they lose.
Yeah,
That is
yeah,
just,
yeah,
we saw it with Mandela Barnes in 2022 in Wisconsin, where you have a situation where if somebody can be branded as too far to the left, they lose. It's just really that simple. And the Republicans just keep putting their hands on the stove and losing.
yeah, yeah,
And frankly, the only thing that saved Trump was he's got some. Well, actually, this brings me to the point I was going to build off on what Michael said about Bernie. If you want an equivalent in the Republican Party, it's Trump. Bernie and
yeah,
Trump both understand the impulse in the electorate for populism
yeah.
and for that kind of thing, and they both can't get out of their own way. They can't be pragmatic enough and disciplined enough as politicians to get out of their own way and really build a majority coalition, which is possible in a populist vein if you do it right.
Yeah,
And they
but
can't do it.
the difference is that Trump, does that, and Republicans vote for him. And on the Democratic side, Bernie Sanders, you know, has shit the bed repeatedly in presidential elections and with his endorsements. So take that from
Yeah,
what you will.
it's true.
But we got a good note here from Lynn Muster, who says that she says, I think Dem should run on accountability for the war criminals, Heg says, and the domestic criminals, Bovino and Nome. Thoughts? I mean, you bring that up, and I just mentioned it because I saw this post, I saw the ad by Juliana Stratton I mentioned earlier. And in that ad, she talks about prosecuting Trump. I think this is something that you're going to, I mean, look, she could look, she says she wants to abolish ICE too. Guess what? She ain't abolishing ICE. Okay, that's not happening. At least not for the next 3 years. That's for sure. So, but the point. I think the point more is that kind of message is one that I think Democrats want to hear. Now, will she
Well,
play that in a general election? Probably not. But in a primary, sure.
I, I actually, was just going to say you need to run two campaigns. You need to run a primary, you need to run a
Yeah,
general.
that's
What
right.
I think it is good about the accountability and arrest Trump kind of messaging in a primary is it's not something that you can't come back from. You start talking about ideologically left positions like abolish ICE, you may be alienating swing voters, especially in some of the red places where you're going to have decisive Senate races. But I think you can get away with, hey, we're going to hold Hegseth accountable. By the way, New Echelon Insights polling last night, his favorables are awful. So like you can absolutely lean into Hegseth and Nome and accountability and that stuff in a primary, which signals that you're a fighter to the base without kind of it being a bridge too far in a general election, without you not being able to turn back and pivot back to the center. Whereas I think some of these ideologically left positions, you get yourself boxed in where you can't undo that. You can't unring the bell in a digital age where they have you on tape, saying things. And I think that that's very important to kind of navigate between what the base wants and what the average swing voter wants. The thing I would say about general elections, though, is your message has to be on affordability. That has to be number one, the top priority, especially given where
Uh,
gas prices are going, inflation. I mean, that's what voters care about the
yeah, but I
most.
think it only works if you tie it to Trump. I don't think affordability
Sure,
on its own.
absolutely.
Like I mean, I know. Look, I
He's
know that.
making things more expensive.
Right. That's the argument. It's you want to link
Right,
any the issue you heard about to Trump being a bad president. I think that's the bottom line.
right.
And I think that's what you're going to see more of, or you'll see the exceptions are the ones like the ad that Janet Mills ran, basically attacking Plattner for his views on women and rape. I really do think, by
I,
the way, that once that Mills begins to gin up the Oppo research, that I suspect Plattner's numbers are going to falter.
I keep waiting for that, expecting that, and this is the first time she's gone on the air, so I really do think I'm interested to see where that race is in 6 weeks. The ad I think you're going to see over and over again in the fall is some sort of quote from Trump in 2024 claiming that he's going to bring all these prices down
Right.
and then claiming that affordability is a hoax and then like prices like where they were on Joe Biden's last day, where they are on Donald Trump, where they are right now on all sorts of key items and things that are essential to people's lives. So basically say he's made your life worse that because that's the argument. I agree with Michael. It's negative, um, but it's tied more to people's lives. Where I get hesitant on some of the like accountability kind of stuff is I think we can get ourselves distracted from the fact that most voters are more focused on their own lives. They've soured on Trump because he's doing things that are making their lives worse, their communities worse.
So there's a great little clip that's gone on, circling on social media. This woman in Pennsylvania who she was asked,
Yeah, I
Jonathan
was afraid
the
that.
Jonathan Allen, I think his name is, who asked her, "What do you think about Trump?" And she called him a worthless pile of shit, which that checks out. And she said she voted for him 3 times, and she's like, maybe I'm an idiot. No, not maybe. You're definitely an idiot, and that it took you 10 years to realize that Donald Trump's a worthless pile of shit is really an indictment of you. But better late than never, I guess, right? And I think
And by the way, she's in a swing district. She's
it's
in
in a
a
swing district.
major
Yeah,
swing
yeah,
district.
exactly. I just think that is the. But look at his approval ratings. They are now at. I look at the Times numbers right now. There's 40% approval, 55 disapproval. That is, I think, one of the lowest he's been at this year. I think Nate Silver had something up earlier saying his
Yeah.
um, polling average, he said that's the lowest he's ever seen Trump. So look, this is the
Yeah.
thing, and I can tell you the war is not helping, and the higher gas prices are not helping. By the way, on the war, like if you listen to the things that Trump is saying, he's insane. Like he's a legitimately crazy person. Like the things he is saying are so divorced from reality. He has no idea what he is doing. Absolutely no idea what he is doing.
No.
There's no plan at all. They completely stumbled into this war without thinking through the potential consequences or the kind of cost of going to war. And it's a friggin' disaster. There's no way around it.
Yeah,
Politically,
I
in
was
particular.
that Nate Silver number, he has him at a net approval of minus 15.3, which spoiler is really, really, really bad. And I could not agree uh more with Michael about the war. I was reading to prep to teach George W. Bush and Iraq, and they didn't learn anything from the fact that we fought a Middle Eastern war against a very bad regime that you could have legitimately argued need to be removed, and we didn't plan at all for how to secure the peace. We didn't plan
No,
at all for an
no,
end game, and
no.
it went disastrously. And these guys were like, you know what? Let's try that again.
So then again,
That's a
yeah.
great idea.
And by the
That's
way,
a great thing.
speaking of George W. Bush, have you ever looked at his approval numbers in like his second term after '06, especially? They are
20s,
fucking
high
awful in the
20s.
twenties. Like
Yep.
you think Trump's unpopular? This is nothing compared to where Bush was in '07 and '08. Like literally below 30% on a consistent basis. I mean,
Yeah,
if Trump ever gets there, then they're really screwed.
I absolutely agree with that. Harold, I'm just looking up the specific number for that Pennsylvania race. Yes, in Altoona, Pennsylvania, Democrats thought they had a shot at pulling an upset. Now, this is a place where Trump won by 20 or by
30, 33
32.6%.
points, I think it was. Yeah,
33 points, and the Democrat lost last night by 15.2 points. So it's a 17.4 point swing. And in the other Pennsylvania race, it was over an 18 point swing. So, yes, they lost. But when you consider, and I actually think this is something that's illustrative for us as we go forward with special elections.
yeah,
One real problem Democrats face in these really red places where they think they might be able to pull upsets is as soon as people start to buzz about there being an upset potential, it activates Republicans, and the upset potential fades because you need everything to be perfect to
yeah.
win in a Trump plus 33 place. But the fact of the matter is that it was a huge swing. Project that 17 point swing on a whole heck of a lot of other districts, and they're flipping.
Right.
Um, and I think that that's the important part to keep in mind. And I think that, we're starting to get into an environment where the R plus 10, 11, 12 seats are in play in the fall. And that is really close. We're on the cusp of an environment where the Senate is like genuinely uncertain and in play, toss up
Yeah.
kind of thing. We're not there yet, I don't think. I think if the election was tomorrow, Republicans would hold the Senate. But I think given the trajectory of things, I wouldn't feel particularly good if I was a Republican senator in one of these states that Trump won by 13 points. I just
Yeah.
wouldn't.
Look,
Even if I was Roger Marshall, who just got a veteran who jumped in on the Democratic side, I don't know that I'd feel particularly comfortable today. He probably still wins, certainly, but probably is not definitely.
so I'll just say for the record, I think we probably should stop talking about the Senate because we keep making the same arguments over and over again of saying we think this could be close. We don't know. We just don't know. And until we see more polling and until we have candidates in some of these races, we just don't know. Like the Iowa thing, we don't know until we know who the hell's running. We don't know about Texas until we know if Corner Paxton wins the runoff. So I think we need
By
to,
the way, important point on that. Yesterday at 5 p.m. was the deadline for one of them to get out of the runoff.
and it didn't
So
happen.
no matter what happens now, both names will be on that ballot for that late May race.
I mean,
Um,
Paxton's not dropping out. It's pretty obvious he's not
no,
dropping out.
no,
So, by the way, we got a comment saying they think Trump will get below W because the economic policies are about to kick in. I don't agree. Actually,
no.
I think the
I disagree with that.
Bush lost support among Republicans, and I just don't. There's no evidence Trump is losing support among MAGA. He just isn't. He's at 90% with you know people who still identify as Republicans. I just don't see it. I think he's going to continue to maintain that support for the foreseeable future. I
Well,
don't get why. I don't get it, but he will.
I wholeheartedly agree with Michael in that I think that the days of presidents like George W. Bush and Jimmy Carter getting under 30 are probably gone given the polarization that we have today. The one thing I would say is if there's anything that could change that, it would be if he sends a large contingent of ground troops into Iran.
Right.
That could really test our
Which
theory,
he's not going to do.
but
I mean,
it's
it's
not
like
going to do.
logistically impossible.
Yeah,
I mean, because
and
he could send some ground troops in, but not like 100,000 ground troops or something.
right, right, and I think the thing is if he's minus 15.2 in Nate Silver's average today, could that get to 18, 19? Yeah, but is it going to get to 35? 30? No, I don't think it. I just
Let me
don't
say for the
think.
record, if Trump gets below 30 between now and November, then Democrats will win the Senate. I'll just say that
Yeah,
right off the bat. I'll just say it. But I
Democrats
don't
will
think
win the
that.
Senate. They'll win the Ohio governor's race. They'll win all kinds of races that we're not even really talking about as all that
Yeah, yeah,
competitive
yeah.
today. But one other thing I want to
By
make
the
this.
way, Brian, I'm going to cut you off for one second. Your microphone is a little garbled. Anyone else hearing that? It's just me because I gain a little bit of garble from your mic.
I'll move it
So
closer.
there you go.
I'll
Maybe
move
that's
closer
better.
to the mic.
Uh,
Yeah, is that
okay,
better?
that's a little better actually. Yeah, there you go. Look at that. We solved the
Yeah,
problem. Well, we'll
I will
see.
work on my setup. Maybe I'll move it to my side so it's closer. Um, but yeah, and, new tech. We have to make sure we get it down. But Trump's age, Maxine. I got to be honest. I
Nope.
think that we litigated that.
Now I'm getting the garble again. So that's what happened
Yeah.
right there.
I think that we litigated that. I think that we litigated that in 2024. You had a much younger Democrat against Donald Trump, and the voters just didn't care.
Yeah.
That's unless he starts to have Biden moments, and I think that a lot of what happened to Joe Biden wasn't fair.
Biden moments. Biden
But
moments. He'd be lucky to have Biden moments. I mean, Jesus Christ. He's the things he says are insane. He went after the Supreme Court the other
right, right,
day, and
but
I mean, it's crazy the things that he says.
right, but they're fairly or unfairly. There is a difference among a lot of voters who will say, who are much more troubled about the fact that a guy can't get a sentence out than they are about the fact that the guy is saying insane things. I think that's crazy. I certainly don't agree with that. If it was me, I'm much more worried about the fact that he says insane things, that his ranting. I mean, and we didn't even talk about him weighing in on what I've dubbed the most important debate of the week, which is micro penis Mark Levin. Um, if you haven't followed this, he felt compelled to defend Mark Levin, the right wing nut job conservative radio host, because Megyn Kelly has started calling him micro penis Mark over the war in Iran, and they're feuding. And so Trump weighed in on that. Like, what president has time to do that? And it was
I can't
incoherent.
imagine something I give less of a shit about than anything Megyn Kelly and Mark Levin have to argue about. Seriously, it's like who's the bigger tool would be the
It's
what
impossible to know.
it's impossible
Or
to
the
know.
answer might be Tucker Carlson, but
Uh, um, Yeah, we have Elvis says Trump says insane things with conviction that fools a lot of people. Not anymore, doesn't.
that's right.
Not any fucking more, doesn't. I mean, it fools a lot of Republican voters who clearly, like, if you tell them this way to the egress, they'll just follow you. But like in general, it is insane that people continue to not realize how
By
crazy
the
Trump
way,
is. But I say that I think he's gotten significantly worse. And his stuff on the Iran war. I mean, it makes. I mean, it demonstrates like how poorly thought out this war was. But I do think it has a political impact. I just think that people don't like the war, and I think they hear Trump and they think, "Why are we doing this?" Look, his numbers on the war are basically identical to where his approval ratings are, which just tells you that basically people don't like Trump. Just that they're not rallying around the president because he went to war in Iran.
yeah, I agree with that. The one thing I would say that I think is very important for us to understand is there are two separate bad things that could happen to Republicans here. And the one that seems more likely in a lot of cases is the less bad thing, which is they could lose a lot of people who they won in 2024 to the couch. These are people who are not particularly happy with the Democrats either. They are
Right,
disillusioned and they may just not show up. I think that, for it to really, for him to get down into the 20s, for them to have that kind of election, those people have to be willing to vote for Democrats. And one thing that we've seen in focus groups and other things is that they're not particularly thrilled with Democrats. They
right,
they are angry at Trump, they're angry at MAGA, but a lot of, especially the younger ones, a lot of them are just feeling disillusioned. Like they thought Trump would fix things, he didn't. So they're
right.
like, I don't care about politics now. Why should I care about politics? So I think that is something to understand in terms of a limiting factor for how low these things go. And again, there are things that could change that. If gas is approaching $4 a gallon, if it gets over 5 and stays there, that's a different story. If huge numbers of ground troops, there are things I could envision that really swing this very hard, but it is, something that I don't think is actually going to happen is my guess. So that's my feeling.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. I don't really disagree. I just think, in general, I just think that Trump's look, he's unpopular. He's going to remain unpopular, and that's the defining issue of this campaign and will be the defining issue of this campaign.
Yeah.
And as it is now, like with the interesting primary last night, I think really because it shows what's happening within the Democratic Party. But we're really kind of at a point where the most interesting primaries are going to happen not for a few more months. There's nothing really interesting coming up. Michigan, I think, is in
No,
June or July.
no,
Maine is in June.
August.
August. Sorry.
Yeah, Michigan's not till
Maine.
August.
Right. Maine is in June. What's the other interesting primary?
Michigan,
Ohio shouldn't
Maine.
be that interesting. I
I
mean,
don't know
those are
when
the.
Iowa is. Iowa's
I
late,
guess
I think.
so. I think we're kind of like we're gonna. There's not a lot happening as far on this front.
Well,
See where things are in a few months.
the
A better
most
sense of where things
interesting
stand.
race upcoming, the biggest election night upcoming, I think it's April 7th, and that's the Wisconsin Supreme Court race.
Ah, yeah, right.
Yeah. And that's a general election. But I agree that the primaries, I was thinking about doing election night shows like we did for Texas. I was like, well, maybe we do one for the Wisconsin Supreme Court race, but then not again till Maine in June.
Yeah.
Because there's just not that many that are particularly interesting. There are House races that are interesting, House primaries, but they don't get as much attention.
No.
And in a lot of cases, it's not particularly clear who the better candidate is.
Yeah,
So,
and a lot of these races are not competitive. By the way, Lynn asked in
right.
Massachusetts. I mean, I don't know when that primary is. I think it's late, but from everything I've been reading and talking to people about this, it looks like Markey is a pretty solid bet to win that race. I haven't seen much evidence that Moulton is having much of a getting much traction. So until I see otherwise, I'm assuming the Markey's probably gonna prevail. Which, by the way, if he does, I mean, Ed Markey, man, badass. He had a primary challenge 6 years ago from a Kennedy. He'd staved that off. Now he's got one from Markey. Looks like he might. I mean, from Moulton, he might trade like not stop that one. Give the guy some credit. Um, Anything else? I think that's the main thing on politics. I just want to mention a couple of things also. I mean, we talked about the war a little bit. I think this is the biggest issue that's really is undermining Trump's support. And I think, it's hard to see where this thing kind of goes, right? I don't know. I mean, I think one of the problems I have with the way the war is being fought is that I get what the Israelis are trying to do. They're trying to spread chaos, more or less. They're trying to like undermine the regime. What is our objective here? Like, are we going to provide any kind of off ramp for Iran on this war? Are we going to like stop the Israelis from killing every single potential leader? I don't get what our end game is here.
Well, Michael, I think that the good news for you is if you listen to Donald Trump all day, you'll find an answer that you like at some point during the day. There's just problem is there are just about 12 other answers. I don't think he knows what his goal is. I think he would like to enact regime change. I think that he would
Yeah,
like to bring that about, but he wants to keep the costs lower than make that possible. I
right,
don't think that he's interested in a status quo ante kind of deal where they reopen the straits and the regime stays in place
right,
necessarily. Or at least I think he wants to give the Israeli and American bombing campaign more time to inflict damage. And realistically speaking, I think it's probably not a bad thing that the Israelis continue to kill hardline leaders, especially now that they started going after the paramilitary that is terrorizing civilians and opposition. I also thought it was interesting that one of the assassinations yesterday apparently depended on intelligence from Iranians who ratted out where the guy was. But realistically speaking, I don't think he understands the situation well enough to have an end game. I don't think he understands what um problem is. I'll work on the mic here. I'm trying. I moved it closer.
is
Is
anyone
that
else
better
hearing?
if I'm
Is it just me who's hearing it? Is anybody else hearing that? Because I'm hearing a little bit of like a garbled or just kind of like sounds a little strained.
is it better if I'm right on top of it?
Nope, doesn't make a difference.
No? Okay. All right. So then I have to work on my mic. We
Okay.
will we will see that. I can also
It might just be me, by the way. It might just be me. Oh, so no one else is. It's a little crunchy. Yeah. Okay. All right.
All right,
Um,
I will work on this.
this is really
Um,
excellent.
my the,
Oh, now I can't hear you at all.
can you hear me better with it on my earbuds? Is that better?
It's fine. Nope. No,
Oh,
go back to the way it was before. I'm
okay.
getting an echo.
We are working on the technology as we speak.
let me
Um,
let, let me vamp for a second. I want to mention one thing. There's a pretty insane blockbuster story today in the New York Times about Cesar Chavez. This was one of the more distressing articles I've read in quite some time. Cesar Chavez, of course, very legendary Mexican American activist, labor activist. Apparently, was also a serial rapist. And it seems like he actually, what's it called? He sexually assaulted Dolores Huerta, who was one of his top lieutenants in the labor movement. This is a story. Really, I mean, I read a lot about Cesar Chavez. Obviously, I think I've always thought of him sort of a heroic figure. He does sound like he was a predator as well. So it's a pretty crazy story, worth reading. But it's a good reminder of something Brian and I talk about often, which is that men are the worst. We suck.
that and I also think
Now
it
wait,
is
now it's much worse, by the way, your volume.
uh, okay. The volume got worse.
No, the crunchiness
Uh,
got worse.
Huh. I was playing with the gain on my microphone to see because I'm using an actual microphone with settings,
That's much better
and
right now. Right now is much better.
yeah, so I turned the gain back up. All right, that
Yeah,
then we've learned that helps.
yeah.
Um, the other thing I think it is a good reminder of is that turning people into heroes, is dangerous. And I always flash back to Lyndon Johnson. Lyndon Johnson did plenty of good, like really good things. Medicare, elementary and
Voting Rights Act,
secondary
Civil
Voting
Rights
Rights Act,
Act. Yeah,
Civil Rights Act. He also was corrupt. That and he also was treated his staff like shit. He was misogynistic in a lot of ways. Like the answer is that's how people are. You can have people who do a lot of good and a lot of bad simultaneously.
yeah,
And I think that this story is a reminder that projecting onto political figures, activists, that they are sort of heroes, sometimes underscore or kind of forgets that they can be very, very, very flawed and even monstrous in some ways while being great in others.
yeah. But I think it's like, yeah, it's true. I mean, I just think it's also like a function of just that. I think the kind of people who aspire to political leadership. I mean, this is a. I don't, they can be a little narcissistic. I mean, I think you have to be. I don't think Barack Obama, is a bad person. I don't think he's somebody who's a predator or a rapist in any kind of way, or somebody who's disrespectful to women. But at the same time, like he's a narcissist. I mean, to run for president, you have to be a little narcissistic, and narcissism. There's certainly some bad character traits associated with narcissism. I think you see that with somebody like this. Obviously, Cesar Chavez. We see other leaders. I mean, certainly that's the case with Trump, for sure. But I don't know. I thought the story was. I was very shaken reading the story because I think what's interesting also is that Chavez has been dead for a long time. He's been a heroic figure for a long time, and this story never came out until now. I mean, I think there have been hints about it for a long time, but they never came out until now. I think kind of shocking. And what can you say? It's disturbing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 33 years after his death, for this to be a blockbuster story that the New York Times worked on for 5 years.
5 years. 5 years
Yeah,
they worked on it. It's amazing. It's amazing. So
yeah, really is. And oh, by the way, it is a reminder again of how important good journalism is and
yeah.
how good journalism is expensive, it's time consuming, and that if you're Jeff Bezos and you don't understand these things and all you're worried about is engagement with stories and clicks and things, you do really stupid shit.
Yeah, I gotta say, one of the things that is really interesting about the Bezos thing. Yesterday, there was a whole bunch of Washington Post staffers, including Dana Milbank, who I don't not a huge fan of his work, but he's been at the Post for a very long time. He's sort of an institution there. Also, Jeff Stein, who's an excellent economics reporter, they both left the Post to go to Notice, which is what's it called? News United States of America. It stands for, and I think the Post is in serious, serious trouble. And this is bad for journalism. It's like the Post breaks a lot of stories. The Post has been a good paper, but they have so destroyed their staff and so destroyed their brand that I don't know if they're going to keep getting there, keep being
Yeah.
a great paper.
My pal Paul Kane was on that list, who is their senior congressional guy who's been around the Hill
Right.
forever and has all kinds of institutional knowledge that younger reporters don't have. You know, the list of people who has fled the Post is insane. The Athletic basically took their sports department, which was one of the best in the country. It really is sad. And I think Robert Albritton, who I believe founded Politico and is the guy, the founder of Notice, recognizes an opportunity here. And
Right.
they're trying to build, they're trying to build something that takes advantage of this. And I think it's good. Notice does great work. I get their
No,
the
their
newsletter.
Notice is an excellent outlet. I subscribe to
Oh,
them. They do a great job.
speaking of Notice, they did something. They had a stat yesterday that absolutely blew my mind, Michael, that it hasn't gotten enough attention, but it really speaks to a problem in America. Do you know how many of our 100 senators are millionaires?
43.
Now, the answer is 73.
Seriously?
73 of our 100 senators are millionaires.
Really? Wow. That's a shocking number.
Right?
I thought 43 might have been too high. 73?
Yeah, 73 was the number. Notice did this whole thing on money in politics that came out yesterday that had just some insane numbers like that. And I just, it really speaks to a problem. They interviewed Chris Van Hollen, whose net worth was like very, very low. And he said that's part of why we are doing why we don't get policy right. The lead on that story was the Senate is a millionaires club. At least 73 of the 100 sitting U.S. senators have a median net worth of more than $1 million, according to a Notice analysis of lawmakers' most recent financial disclosures. That's just
Well, there's a whole
shocking.
story about this that Mark Wayne Mullen, who's nominated for DHS secretary, basically became a multimillionaire when he was in the Senate. Like he's increased his net worth substantially since he entered the Senate. I mean, it's pretty fucking disturbing how much these guys just like can cash in by just becoming members of Congress, members of the Senate.
Yeah, and I do think it skews policy. Even if you take the most benign explanation, which is that most of these people are older, that to have the time and the inclination to run for the Senate, you need a fair amount of net worth. Like even if you take the most benign explanations, it does skew their understanding of what the problems are in the country and what policy ought to be and who has access to them and things like that. Part of Trump's, I think, delusions about the economy are that he goes to Mar-a-Lago every weekend and is around a bunch of very wealthy people who experience a very different America than everyone else. But that
Who are the
number
ones?
blew
Who
my
are the
mind.
ones who are not millionaires? I'm just kind of curious.
Let me see if I can find a chart.
I'm guessing Alyssa
Um,
Slotkin's not a millionaire. I'm guessing Gary Peters is not a millionaire. Cory
well,
Booker,
Van Hollen had a very small amount of net worth outside of the equity in his house. Obviously the most wealthy are Jim Justice, Rick Scott, people like that. But like Elizabeth Warren, millionaire.
yeah.
They have a net worth of nearly $11 million right now.
Wow. Bernie
Um,
Sanders is a millionaire, obviously.
Richard Blumenthal, 159 million. He married into wealth. Bill Hagerty, 45 million. The list is
What about
pretty
Chuck
endless.
Schumer? He's not a millionaire, is he?
Um,
I can't
I
believe he's a
don't see
millionaire. If he is, that's
that.
very impressive because he's been a public servant for pretty much his entire life.
Yeah, I don't see, there's not a chart in here, but I'm scanning quickly. Republican senators on average have a higher median net worth than their Democrat colleagues. The median net worth for the members of the Senate Democrat caucus is more than 2.9 million, while for Senate
Wow.
Republicans it's nearly 5.7 million.
Wow.
Uh, we're talking about it's 41 of the 53 Republicans have a median net worth of over $1 million, and 32 of the 47 Democrats.
Wow, that's crazy. Sorry, my dog is freaking out. Sorry. By the
Baxter's
way,
disturbed by this very disturbing information.
he really is. By the way, Markwayne Mullen testifying today in Congress. Interesting conversation because I guess he and Rand Paul kind of hate each other. And
Really hate each other.
you guys should watch the video if you can find it. So apparently, like when Rand Paul was attacked a couple years ago, like Markwayne Mullen basically was like kind of endorsed the guy who attacked him,
Yeah.
and he called Paul a snake. And like Rand Paul today was like, "Are you going to like apologize for what you said about me?" And he refused to apologize. It was pretty crazy, actually. And what's also interesting about this is that like Paul runs the Homeland Security Committee. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. He could stop Rand Paul. He could stop Mullen's nomination in committee. The
Well,
problem is that I think Fetterman's going to vote for him. Go ahead and vamp, Brian. I got to deal with
yeah,
the dog for a second. Okay.
yeah. Markwayne Mullen is very, very, very lucky. And he's very, very, very lucky because John Fetterman, the one Democrat who is likely to support him, is on that committee, which would break the deadlock. Because if it deadlocks in committee, it's very hard to get a nomination out. They would do it. They'd figure out the way procedurally to do it, but it's difficult. It's time consuming. So he's very lucky that he's cultivated a good relationship with Fetterman. And he's making conciliatory soundings. The other thing that was interesting about that hearing is apparently they're gonna have to go into the skiff, the secure facility, because he seemed to suggest that he went on like classified missions while he was in Congress, which is pretty mind blowing. And he didn't. He was saying he couldn't reveal anything, and then Rand Paul and Gary Peters, the Democratic ranking member, were not having that. So he's like, "Well, I can talk in generalities in the skiff." So that is something to kind of watch as
I
well.
was watching that actual that back and forth. It sounded like absolute bullshit. But I think what's interesting about this is that without Fetterman's vote, I don't think Mullen gets to become DHS secretary. And this is just one more reason why Fetterman is, I think, such an unlikely to get reelected. I mean, he is just pissing off every possible Democratic primary voter.
What is fascinating about Fetterman is you're 100% right. He's even pissed me off. As sympathetic a Pennsylvania voter to moderates as you're going to find. Okay, that's just the fact of the matter. Okay, but still useful when compared to or maybe the irony of this is he finds ways like this to piss Democratic voters off while still being basically a normal liberal. He's voting against the Save America Act. He said, I would support a straight up voter ID, but that's it. I won't support this nonsense. So it's just very interesting to
Yeah,
see
I
how he
agree.
just seems to delight in pissing people off.
I agree. I think that I don't get it. It's like the Kirsten Cinema School of
Michael,
Politics,
I
and of
don't
course,
hear you. I don't know if everyone else can hear you.
can you hear me, guys? Is that better?
I can't hear you at all now.
Hold on.
See, technology is hard. This new
Yeah,
subject
we're having
platform
all
is
guys.
going
We're
to be a
having a lot
good
of
thing
problems today.
in the long run
You're
for
getting a
us,
lot of crackle.
but
I,
short term,
I,
can other people hear Michael? Maybe it's me.
yeah, I'm having a lot of trouble hearing you. You're getting a lot of crackle on your thing, and it's a little
Oh, those
problematic.
in the chat. Okay, so
Yeah, you're
it's
very
me. I
yeah,
just
Brian.
can't
You
hear him.
really are
Okay,
scratchy. So, guys, you know what I think we're gonna do?
interesting.
I think we're gonna finish this up kind of quickly. I have to jump off at by 2 o'clock, and we're having just some technical issues today. I'm afraid I don't know what's going on. Um, so I think we're gonna make this call this one early. Yeah, there's definitely some crackle. We'll finish up in a few minutes. Actually, we just ask is any okay, Kelly, this is the excuse she needed to overhaul his entire setup. So here's the thing, guys. Anybody have any questions you want to throw out there really quick? We can do it. We can do a lightning round. Anything quickly you want to talk about? Bring it up, and we'll hit that. I'm actually going to put my headphones back on because I can't even hear myself right now. All right. So, oh, I'm getting. This is not good, guys. This is not good.
We'll figure this out.
I'm getting echo from you now, actually, Brian. Yep, see, I'm getting an echo from you. Whatever you're doing, I'm hearing an echo.
I don't understand. I record videos every day. You would think that it the same exact setup, it would work, but apparently not.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
we will work on this.
Yeah, there's an
Are we
echo, which
right?
is much you gotta put your headphones back in, Brian.
Okay.
Really sorry, guys, for this. I don't know why this is happening. It's
That
a little
is that
unusual. We
better?
usually don't. That is better. That is better, but it's still, yeah, it's
Okay, I
better.
mean, this is week 1 with the new technology, so we will
So really
figure
quick
this
though,
out.
I think we're gonna jump off with things. But anybody have a quick lightning round question? Anything you want us to talk about really quickly? We're happy to address. Um, but if not, we can just kind of call this one a little early since we are having issues. And Bobby, it's a good question. I don't think we're ride and die with Substack. It's a good way to promote this, but it is just a really crappy platform. And I've had this experience with other platforms as well. And it's other. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say other platforms. I've had this experience with other um, Substack lives that I've done where there's technical issues with it, and the fact that it's very hard to do this on your computer, you have to do it on your phone. It's very frustrating. So we may have to put this on YouTube at some point in the future. We'll see what happens with that.
Yeah.
But again, any last questions you guys want to. Will Iran try to assassinate the Mango Man? No, they will not try to assassinate him because
I,
they would.
I think they understand that the outcome of that would be very, very, very bad for the regime.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't think that's
I
going to
mean,
happen at all.
I think that we may head to chaos in Iran, but I think that they understand intuitively that two things could draw a massive ground invasion out of the United States: assassinating Trump or a major terrorist attack in the United States.
Yeah, although I don't even the ground troops thing, I think logistically it's pretty much impossible. What I am sort of surprised by, and what I don't understand, is why the U.S. continues to back Israel's efforts to destroy Iran's oil infrastructure. I just don't understand the logic behind this. I mean, I got to say this, and I've said it before about the Iran situation. Look, I get why Israel wants to go to war against Iran. That makes sense to me. Iran is a significant threat to Israel. The nuclear program's a threat, but I don't see in any way, shape, and form how destroying Iran's oil infrastructure is good for America. I don't get it. I don't see how having a war that leaves Iran a closed Strait of Hormuz is good for America. The benefits of this war to the United States are so marginal, right? Like this is the thing about Trump and why, and like it's not just even Trump, but this is the wrong way to think about a military, um, the use of force. Is that just because you can win militarily doesn't mean it's a good idea. Okay, it does not mean it's a good idea to go to war simply because you can do some damage. You have to have a political objective, and I have no clue whatsoever what the political objective is of this war. I get what it is for Israel. I do not get what it is for the United States. And that is the issue that really frustrates me about this is that, we are incurring huge costs, okay? Reputational costs, diplomatic costs, and of course, economic costs, not just to us, but to the entire world. And what are we getting for that? What are we getting? Like you can decide that I want to pay a certain level of costs because the benefits outweigh those costs. I don't see the benefits of this. I don't see what we're getting for going to war with Iran. Okay. And so we weaken their ability to build missiles. I mean, this is the thing about this. The whole rationale for the war was they could one day build a missile that could fire a nuclear bomb. So we're going to go to war to stop Iran from firing a bomb they don't have perched on a missiles they haven't built. How does that make any sense? So I think what is, and I think this is also why the war is so unpopular because people see this. People sense that this doesn't make any fucking sense. That there's no issue with, like, okay, we don't like Iran. Iran's bad. Ayatollah is bad. We get all of that. But, like, you need to have more than just that to justify a war. And they haven't done it. And, look, forget the politics of it, which are bad. It just is a stupid, stupid, stupid war. It's even stupider than the Iraq. Well, not at the end of the Iraq War. The Iraq War is stupider. But it's like, it's not an Epstein distraction, Len. I hate this argument. It's nothing to do with Epstein, okay? Please. The Epstein thing, people think everything that Trump does is an Epstein distraction. It's not. They don't care that they care about the issue, but like that this is all about Trump's desire to have a victory. He thinks he got a big win in Venezuela. Somebody's going to get a big win in Iran. That's what is driving us more than anything else. It's his ego. And I just think that it, it's a disaster. It is an absolute disaster. Sorry, my rant is over. I'm done. I'm done.
And by the way, he wants to go to Cuba next. I mean,
Ah, yeah, thank you. That was the by the way, that's another Jeffrey Epstein. He thinks he can turn Cuba into a democracy. He thinks he can undo the communist 50 years of communist, 60-year communist rule. That's what this is about. There's
well,
no like this is the thing that I have to say. Like everyone always thinks that there's like some secret motive here. Okay, there with Trump there isn't. Okay, his id, whatever like makes his ego feel better. That's what's driving this. Okay, he's not smart enough to think I'm going to go to war with Iran to get people to talk about Epstein. He's not that smart. He doesn't think in those terms. He just thinks of like this will make me look good. This will be a nice win. I, that's what this is about.
yeah, I agree with that. I think that there's a
Sorry.
lot of people making connections that aren't out there for Trump. I really think he's decided this is his legacy is I'm going to wipe out every bad
Yes.
regime because look,
Yes.
it's so easy. Look what I did in Venezuela. And yeah, their baseball team beat us last night, which was ironic.
And by the way, I gotta
And
say, Lynn, I didn't mean to lash out. I'm sorry. I apologize. I came across as too harsh. No, because I get triggered by the Epstein thing because I see it all the time and it kind of makes me crazy. So I'm sorry, Lynn. You're one of the best people we have on this chat, and we love you so much because you always make such great comments. You're always here, and we really appreciate it. So I didn't mean to. I apologize if I came across as too harsh. I just think like you just have to understand with Trump, like the text is the text. There's no context. Okay. Sorry, I got it.
And I think that what's important to understand is he had Lindsey Graham, he had the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, he had
Yeah.
Netanyahu, he had other neocons in Republican orbits in his ear being like, this regime's really terrible. You can get rid of them. You can be a historic figure. And I think that
Thank you, Lynn.
it's all. Here's the thing: if you want something out of Trump, you play to his ego. Foreign governments have
Yes.
figured this out. And I think that
Yes.
he's been manipulated by folks who had an agenda here. Um, and they got him into a war, and he did not seem to understand the complexity. He didn't understand how entrenched the regime is, how significant their military capacity is, and their paramilitary capacity,
And their
and
willingness to suffer, their willingness to
and
take hits
my,
and to not give in.
sure, because they're
He thought like Venezuela, they would back down immediately. This would be easy.
right. What he said, I think that was very interesting. What's come out in the last week, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs apparently said to him, "Sir, if you do this, they're going to try to close the straits." And he said, "Oh no, they'll back down, they'll capitulate before that." Like he legitimately thought, "Oh, we're just going to go right on into Tehran. I'm going to be
Yes.
greeted as a conquering hero." He made W look like he had very pragmatically thought through the consequences of invading a major Middle Eastern country. And it's just he's very incompetent, and people are just starting to grasp that now, including a lot who voted for him, like
And he
that
is
woman.
surrounded by the most incompetent fucking people on the face of the earth. Pete Hegseth
Bootlickers.
is a fucking idiot. He is a meathead schmuck. I wrote a piece about this guy 6 months ago about like just like he loves violating international law. He hates human rights law. He basically thinks like he's just a meathead. He's a fucking meathead. And
See,
this is the guy who's like running the fucking Pentagon right now.
uh, every American knows Pete Hegseth. What do I mean? I mean that you had the schoolyard bully, the guy who was not particularly
The guy
bright,
who peaked
who
in high
loved to
school.
beat up. Yeah. Yeah. He peaked in high school. He thinks this is one of his first person shooter games that he was playing in high school when he was actually good at that. I mean, literally his entire conception of all this, he is so incompetent. The parallels with Iraq, at least Donald Rumsfeld was competent.
Oh,
He ended
Don
up being
Rumsfeld's a
a
fucking
disaster.
sociopath. So, let's be clear
Right,
about
right,
that.
right, right.
But at least he was competent. Competent
Right.
sociopath.
Right. Pete Hegseth is a sociopath. He's an incompetent sociopath. I mean, he is just a
Ridiculous.
disaster. And Bondi, I mean, the bipartisan subpoena in the House, which never happens, to
I
get her
know.
to testify under oath. I mean, this is really the C team. I've had a friend who is a never Trump conservative who didn't vote for him, but didn't think this would be that bad, apologized on multiple occasions because he didn't listen to me during the campaign when I said, listen, In the first term, he had normal Republicans surrounding him
Yeah,
who didn't
exactly right.
listen to him when he said to do stupid batshit insane things. Um, this time around, he's figured out who the loyalists are. And those are the people who are going to be around him, and there's going to be no break. And people didn't listen to this. And that's
By the
exactly what's
By the
happening.
way, I know we got to finish that, but I got to say one thing about this Joe Kent letter. So Joe Kent was the deputy national NDI, National Director of Intelligence,
Who
and
never
like
should have been. Don't
who
even get
never
me
should have been
started on how he
white
dissent shouldn't
supremacist,
have confirmed it.
anti-Semite, like just walking idiot. And he wrote this letter resigning over the war, said there was no imminent threat from Iran. Okay, I'm with you there. And then he says he basically blames the Jews, blames Israel blamed Israel for the Iraq War, the Iran War, blamed them for the Iraq War, and also blamed them for the death of his wife, who died in a suicide attack from ISIS. But the best part about this letter, the one that really got me, was that he basically like was defending Trump because you always have because all these people know that you have to basically stroke Trump's ego. And he basically said, like, it's not your fault. You were deceived by the Israelis. Like, what the actual fuck? Your argument for defending Trump is, I'm sorry, President, you're just an easy mark. Like, that's your argument. Maybe he thinks the Jews are so nefarious and deceptive that they were able to pull one over on Trump. No, he's an idiot, and he's an easy mark. And Joe Kent, like, that's your defense. That's your defense. I mean, the fact of the matter is, like, look, I'm going to say it for clear. People say that Israel dragged us in the war. Like, I have a problem with that because ultimately the decision is Trump's. But do I think that Netanyahu, lobbied and perhaps manipulated Trump into thinking this was a good idea? Sure. Why? Because Trump's a fucking moron. But that isn't Netanyahu's fault. That's what every ally of the U.S. tries to manipulate a U.S. president or tries to get them to do something that's in their interests. Okay? Every president generally can say, you know what, I'm not going to do that. Trump's the idiot. And by the way, like, you got Lindsey Graham whispering in his ear, like you said. You got, by the way, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, who's doing this also. No one talks about that. This guy is basically having
Right.
regular calls with Trump, pushing him to hit the
And lining
Iranians
his
even harder
pockets.
and lining his pockets. No, we got to go after the Jews. But seriously, like, this is the problem: is Trump. He's an idiot. He is a fucking idiot. And that is what is happening here. And so we know this already, obviously, but it is just so striking to me how even people who try to defend Trump, their defense of him is that he's an idiot.
And I think it's just worse that he's an idiot because there's some people who are just stupid, right? They don't have a lot of intelligence, but at least they try. This guy is notorious for not reading his briefings. He's
His
not
least
caring about
think.
information. Like you look at George W. Bush, he took his intelligence briefings seriously every morning. He had a lot of flaws and he wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed either. But
Sorry, that was
he tried. At least he tried. I mean,
yeah, he
this
tried.
guy, he's so uncurious. He doesn't understand the world. He doesn't understand policy. I mean, the best, and frankly, he doesn't understand politics either. Part of me thinks he's got like an intuitive sense of what will get certain voters. But right now in the Senate, and we have to finish up, but I want to make sure to make this point. The Senate just did something very rare last week. They passed a bipartisan housing plan,
Yep.
like 89-11 or something like that. And the House is digging in. The Republicans in the House don't like it because they feel like they weren't consulted. Their little egos haven't been stroked. And so a smart president, when affordability is the major issue in the election, would start leaning on his buddies in the House and say, pass this now. Instead, he told Mike Johnson, I don't give a fuck about housing. All I care about is the Save America Act.
Say America, which
This
isn't going to pass.
ridiculous piece of voter suppression legislation that they're going to waste an entire week or two in the Senate because Trump doesn't seem to understand basic math and how you get to 60 votes and is delusional about what happened in the 2020 election. Spoiler, Donald, you lost. You got your head handed to you. Sorry, buddy. I know it hurts. But like, he doesn't even understand politics well. He's just so monumentally incompetent. I'm pretty sure that if Baxter got together with my dog Clover and they ran the country, they'd do a better job of it.
Don't
I
insult
really
my dog.
do.
Of course, back to the country better. Of course he would.
But
Although
there's one other point I want to make sure we get to before we go because it may become a bigger story. Most of the elections, we got good news for Democrats last night. They actually dropped 10 points in a special election in Virginia. where they did 10 points worse. And the reason that this matters is next month there's the referendum on the redistricting map, the Democratic gerrymander that's going to gain them 4 seats. And so far, early voting, the turnout has been much higher in Republican places than in Democratic ones.
Yeah.
And this raises the possibility that Democrats have basically gotten a little bit complacent here. They looked at the California referendum, said we killed it. They looked at the Virginia election, said we dominated those. They say, well, we're doing well in special elections. Democrats turn out in low turnout elections. Republicans don't. But
Yeah.
the right has really latched on to this Virginia referendum as, oh, it's so unfair. It's so mean. It's so awful. And it seems to be resonating with Republican voters, and they are turning out. So if you know anybody in Virginia, make sure they vote on this.
I'm not going to
And
advocate on one half or the other on that one. That's kind of,
but
but I will say this, like, I don't buy it. I don't buy
okay.
it. I think Democrats are going to win the referendum, and I think they will be able to get their voters to the polls. I could be wrong, but it would take a pretty like epic fail for Democrats if this did not pass, because you would expect after Sandberg won by like what 17 points. I would be a little bit shocked if to see that this thing fail. We'll see. I will see. I mean, it's one data point. It's one data point. I
Right.
guess it's actually, that they're turning out better at early voting. So maybe that's a problem, but you still have 2 or 3 weeks until the referendum, and still plenty of time for Democrats to get the voters out. If it's still a problem in a week or two, then we can talk, and then it might be more of an issue.
Yeah, I agree with that. What I think is going to happen is Democrats are going to start sounding the alarm in a week or two and pouring money in, and they're going to
Yeah.
win because it's a Democratic state. But it's just something to keep your eye on if you care about politics, because Florida is apparently going to try to redistrict in April. I don't know what that's
We'll
going to look like,
we'll see. We'll see. I'll believe it
but
when I see it. Sorry,
did you see about
I
the Florida? Well, we're talking about Florida. Do you see about the sheriff's council?
yeah, they basically said stop sending immigrants to stop detaining immigrants. We need them.
Yeah, exactly. They DeSantis has this council of like 8 conservative sheriffs, and 6 of them signed a letter basically saying Congress needs to solve the immigration problem, and Trump, what you're doing is bad, and that tells you that's a great place to end. I think that's where the politics of immigration have gotten.
I think all the time about my favorite clip from Full Metal Jacket, which is that after the Tet Offensive, you have the sort of the colonel. This is the newspaper Stars and Stripes, and the colonel tells them, like, how bad it was, and how Cronkate's come out against the war, and he's like, it's a giant shit sandwich, and everyone has to take a bite. And that's kind of how I feel about, if you're a Republican right now, it is a giant shit sandwich. That is your political future. And sorry for that gross image, but it's evocative. And that's where the future of the Republican Party is, at least in like 2026, which is, it is a giant shit sandwich. And you guys are all have to take a bite.
Yeah,
On that pleasant note,
unless you want to be smart and retire,
which
that's your way out.
some of them are doing. Some of them are doing. All right, guys, this was great. I'm sorry to cut it short today, but I have a lot of work to do, a lot of stuff going on. If you've not subscribed to Truth and Consequences, do it right now. Truthandcons.com. Become a subscriber. If you're not a subscriber to World According to Brian, what is wrong with you? The World According to Brian. Subscribe at Substack, and we'll see you next week. All
Well,
right.
just a quick note. I
Quick note.
apologize to all of you out there. I have scheduling issues the next few weeks, so we may not be on at this time. The next couple of weeks, we're going to do the best we can. We may do a couple of shorter shows or something. We may tape some interviews, but we will be with you when there are big issues. And I promise you, after April the 8th, my schedule goes back to being normal and everything will be fine.
And then I'm going to be in England, but that's okay. On vacation with my kids, but that's okay. We'll figure it out. Don't worry, guys.
Okay.
Thanks, guys. Have a great week. Have a great March, and hopefully it'll be spring soon. And we'll see you next week. All righty. Bye
Take
bye.
care.